Number 5. Assisi, the Shibboleth for the correct understanding of the Council. Translator's footnote: Shibboleth, a saying distinctive of a particular group. See Judges 12:5. Shibboleth, ear of corn, was the password for the Gileadites, by the pronunciation of which they could recognize the Ephraimites. The new theology was certainly not capable of modifying the council documents in their entirety according to their modern standards. But when, for example, Joseph Ratzinger characterizes the pastoral constitution Gaudium et Spes, in connection with the texts about religious liberty and the world religions, as a sort of, quote, counter-syllabus, that means that the new theology has exercised considerable influence on the dogmatic elements of various council documents. If the Pope of the Council himself, Paul VI, must observe to his horror that the, quote, smoke of Satan has penetrated the temple of God through some opening, end quote, then one must ask if this opening is not to be sought in certain characteristics of the council itself. Through the eye of the needle of pastoral language, the anti-spirit of the council could force its way into the documents unnoticed, at least by way of loopholes and later interpretations. Through the abandonment of the philosophia perennis and scholastic terminology, the texts were open to many different interpretations. Through a pastoral language of the council, the entire foundation was porous. Unintended, alien ideas can penetrate not only through a large opening, but also through smaller passages. The promoters of the new theology realized that in a pastoral council, only a new theology could produce a new church. It was only a question of development. Therefore, they were satisfied with the abandonment of the language of tradition. They needed only to build into the texts certain loaded phrases which would summarize the council's message and get it across to modern man as the beginning of a theological development and a renewal of the Church. Footnote: Karl Rahner, quote, "The council is thus the council at the beginning of a new age, and thus the beginning of a beginning, which must be continued by the post-conciliar Church, and thus the council is a challenge for today's Christian." End quote. The exchange of letters between Rahner and Vorgrimler, published in Orientierung, is informative. End footnote. The reasons for the turbulent post-conciliar development in the Church and theology can also be sought in a certain cryptic, ambivalent character of the Council's thinking. From the obscure mingling of contrary endeavors and aims of the Council, namely of the traditional and the new theology, a tension which would remain unresolved since the Council rejected anathemas and dogmatic definitions, a vehement theological controversy had to break out immediately, which left its mark on the entire post-conciliar era and brought the Assisi worship to a head in the fermentation process of Accomodata Renovatio Ecclesiae. The case for the renewal of the Church was supported by appealing to the spirit of the Council. The vehemence of this controversy is an indication of the depth of this unprecedented upheaval, which touches not only pastoral matters, but also the very substance of the faith of the Church. Conservatives and progressives alike appeal in letter and spirit to the same council. The conservatives affirm the continuity of the council and its teaching with tradition, while the progressives emphasize the council's absolute novelties and confirm their break with tradition. The prefect of the Congregation for the Doctrine of the Faith took part in the controversy and tried to clarify. In his view, nothing less than the identity of the Catholic Church was at stake. He rejected the distinctions between a pre- and post-conciliar church. although not a few contemporaries perceive the depth of the change in that light. The prefect defended the dogmatic integrity of the council and its continuity with tradition. With his diagnosis of the council, he felt obliged, however, to differentiate between the true council and the anti-spirit of the council. The true council is identical with the approved council documents. If this be true, the worldwide spread of the anti-spirit of the council cannot be traced back to the council documents themselves. But the anti-spirit of the council has arguments too. It can likewise produce council texts in support of its understanding of the council. One interpretation of the council stands against the other. In former times, one carried out the discernment of spirits in light of the councils. Today we must carry out the discernment of spirits of the council. Faced with the practical realization of conciliar renewal, not a few among the faithful find themselves for the first time in history in a crucial situation, feeling obliged to test the spirits of an ecumenical council, if they are of God or not. 1 John 4:1. That test was conducted most recently in face of the interreligious prayer service at Assisi. Never before in the history of the Church has a quarrel about what an ecumenical council really said and willed so upset the life of the Church as after Vatican II. The controversy over the correct understanding of the council became the striking characteristic of the post-conciliar era. In this unprecedented controversy, Pope John Paul II makes not Holy Scripture, but rather Assisi, the Shibboleth for the correct understanding of the council.